How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
My fellow Americans, welcome. It is great to be with you. It's an open line Friday. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, let me bring you up to speed on the two pieces of breaking news. The Department of Justice has unveiled unsealed a plot to assassinate Donald Trump by the Iranian government. And Jack Smith, the special counsel, is asking the district court in the District of Columbia to pause the prosecution of Donald Trump while he can assess the guidelines of the Department of Justice, which are ultimately going to amount to a dismissal of the case, because Department of Justice guidelines prohibit the prosecution of a president or president-elect. Kind of big news. Now, I want to talk about some other news right now. Y'all, the votes are still being counted. I said this yesterday. Let me say this again to start this, because it's very important you understand. A chart circulated the day after the election, and it purported to relitigate 2020 as clearly it was stolen. Look how many people allegedly voted that year, and now it's a blip. It's back down. There's a reason people circulated that chart the day after the election, because voting is going to continue at least until next Friday, maybe to next Saturday or Sunday. In this country, there are still millions of votes to be counted. So the chart that you saw is actually wrong for the total numbers. In fact, the numbers are going to go up pretty significantly. It took that final number from 2020 took it several weeks after the election for it to come out. Remember that western states, west of the Mississippi, a lot of them vote by mail. Additionally, remember, and if you want to say this is how it was stolen, this wasn't how it was stolen. It was just this was a guideline from the Trump administration itself that a lot of states in the West implemented. They all moved to vote by mail. So Nevada, for example, went to court, and a court allowed the state of Nevada to send everybody an absentee ballot. A lot of states did that around the country, and it was because of COVID. There are a lot of mail-in states like Colorado and Oregon and elsewhere, but also states in 2020 did a mail-in protocol that was much more liberal than in the past or even the present because of COVID. And you can argue whether or not they should have, but that's, I want you to understand, happened. And ballot harvesting does not negate the ballot. Yes, I agree. Democrats ballot harvested the snot out of ballots, but under no law does that invalidate the ballots. It just makes the person who did it go to jail. But the larger point is twofold. One, the number that you saw in that chart is actually wrong because it's going to go up pretty significantly. Two, we have a name for every one of those ballots. So you'll be able to, when this election concludes and all the voting concludes, see who voted in 2020 versus who voted now. And if you go pull the list from 2020, you find a bunch of people who didn't vote this year, go find them and see if they're real people before you just look at the number. It's kind of like a 3-card Monte. They're shuffling around on the table and say, look at this number. No, look at this number. Look at this number. Now, where's the real number? What's the real data? Those numbers are actually people. We know who those people are. By law, we have to know every single person in this country who voted. You can go find those people from 2020. See, did you really cast a ballot in 2020, and why did you not vote now? We'll be able to do that. So hold your horses on that data, please. This gets me then to the next point. The person in charge of this remarkable win for Donald Trump is a woman named Susie Wiles. I mentioned her yesterday in relation to Chris LaCivita. She is Pat Summerall's daughter, the famous sports broadcaster. I don't know her. I've never met her in my life. She had a falling out with the DeSantis camp, but she has worked for Jeb Bush. She ran John Huntsman, the governor from Utah. She ran his campaign. She's run Ron DeSantis' campaign. She ran Rick Scott's campaign. Now she's run Donald Trump's campaign. Highly, highly competent. You may not like some of the people she's worked for, but I mean, keep in mind, Republicans are pushing school choice in this country because of Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush yesterday showered her with praise. So did Rick Scott, also a former governor of Florida. Here's the thing people are missing about this. Susie Wiles is a trained, competent hand. And there's something you can't forget. It took Donald Trump several years to get his sea legs when he became president in 2016. It's no easy thing to transition into politics from the private sector and into the White House from anywhere else. It takes everyone time to get used to it, whether it's a man like George H.W. Bush, who had been vice president, CIA director, chairman of the Republican National Committee, ambassador to China. It still took him a little while to get used to being president, walking into the office, being overwhelmed by the Oval Office. It took Donald Trump quite a while, who he could trust, who he couldn't trust, who he was surrounded with. It's not going to take Donald Trump any time at all to get used to being back in the White House. He's done it before. This is old hat for him. He's been through this rodeo. That means he's going to be able to get up to speed very quickly. And because he's hiring someone like Susie Wiles, he's going to be able to capitalize on his mandate. And yes, we must talk about the word mandate, because Democrats cannot deny a mandate when Donald Trump won the popular vote. He won the popular vote nationwide, and there is a real mandate. I got to play you this from Harry Inton on CNN to put this in perspective for you.
Holy Toledo. All right. Trump gained ground in 49 states and the District of Columbia compared to 2020. I went back through the record books. When was the last time a party gained in so many different places? You have to go all the way back to 1992 when Bill Clinton improved upon Michael Dukakis's performance in 49 states, plus the District of Columbia. The bottom line is, no matter where you looked on the map, Kate Baldwin, no matter where you looked, Donald Trump was improving on where he did 4 years ago, except for Washington State. It is no wonder that at this particular point, he looks like he's going to be the first Republican to win the popular vote since George W. Bush back in 2004.
And to pull that off, he gained ground with groups that Republicans do not generally count as part of their winning coalition, or really at all. How much ground did he gain?
Yeah, again, holy Toledo. It's just like, oh, my goodness gracious. These are the types of groups that you would never have thought that Donald Trump would have gained so much support among 8 years ago when he first won against Hillary Clinton. Trump's was the best GOP showing among 18 to 29-year-olds in 20 years. You have to go all the way back to 2004. How about among black voters? It was the best performance for a Republican candidate for president in 48 years since Gerald Ford back in 1976. And among Hispanic voters, the exit polls only go back since 1972. But Donald Trump's performance on Tuesday was the best for a Republican presidential candidate in exit poll history. He literally goes all the way back through history and breaks history. This is what we're talking about, Kate Baldwin. Groups that you never thought that Donald Trump would do well among, even for a Republican candidate, that is what he did. If the 2016 election was about Donald Trump breaking through with white working class voters, this election was about breaking through and going to that Democratic coalition and tearing it apart.
And it wasn't just what he did for his own support. It trickled down to helping the Senate and helping in the House?
Yeah. So, a lot of talk this morning and this week, as you know, the GOP is going to have a Senate majority. We don't know if the Republicans are going to have a House majority, but we think that that's the most likely to be the case. But I want you to look at the 2024 House GOP national vote showing. So this is the House popular vote. Currently, the GOP is ahead by 5 points. I expect that to shrink a little bit as some of the California results come in. But if let's just say he wins, the House GOP wins by more than 2.6 points, it will be the best House GOP showing in a presidential year in the House popular vote since 1928. If there's any viewer out there who is that old, God bless you. But the bottom line is it was probably the best House GOP national vote showing during most of our viewers' lifetimes.
That's called a mandate, ladies and gentlemen. That's called a mandate. That is a massive, massive shift to the right in this country. And again, every state in the union except Washington state shifted to the right. You want to know where else shifted right? The District of Columbia. 49 states and the District of Columbia shifted to the right. It is the best turnout for House Republicans since 1928. And remember, the biggest gains in Congress in one time for the House of Representatives Republicans came in 2010, and it was the biggest swing in the House of Representatives since 1896. In fact, all the way down to dog catcher, Republicans won more seats in 2010 than at any time in American history since 1896. And now, this year, is the biggest popular vote gain for Republicans since 1928. Friends, if you're a Democrat right now, your reaction, I see it from Bill Kristol at the Bulwark and George Conway. I see it from Jonathan Last. I see it from Tegan Goddard. I see it from Joy Reid. I see it from Democrat after Democrat after Democrat. Your reaction is to blame the voters, blame Americans, say Americans failed, Americans just aren't good people anymore. You're the people who aren't good right now to most Americans, and maybe you should figure out why, because most of the people I know, the overwhelming number of people I know, people who listen to this program, they call me and they tell me two things. I don't like Donald Trump, but they felt more personally impacted by the wreckage of Joe Biden's economy than they ever did by Donald Trump's mean tweets. They felt more like you guys on the left were trying to punish them for not sharing your thoughts than Donald Trump's ever tried to punish them. He's got a mandate now. And the danger for you guys on the left is that he's hired a consummate political operator named Susie Wiles to be his chief of staff, who has great relationships with the far right and the moderate Republicans. You had Charlie Kirk and Jeb Bush both praising the appointment. In fact, there have been practically no people on the right criticizing the appointment. Again, I don't know her, but I know her reputation. And her reputation's a solid reputation. Which means he's going to have in place a chief of staff who's not going to take BS from the hucksters and the grifters. Donald Trump may be friends with my pillow guy, but he's not going to get an appointment in the administration at a level that matters. She's going to know how to manage the fringy people who have surrounded Donald Trump and the grifters who've tried to profit off of him, claiming that they're helping him. She's going to know how to get stuff done. She's going to know how to get stuff done through Republican coalitions in Congress. She's going to know how to get stuff done within the executive branch. And then he's got these other great people surrounding him who are going to know how to navigate the Department of Justice, where so many of the wokes have embedded from the Obama and now Biden administration. They've embedded in there as career civil servants. They're going to know how to get rid of them, to drive them out. He's not playing this time. He's not going to have to get up to speed. He's not going to have to get his sea legs. He's going to be able to come in full steam ahead. You know, the only hang up to the incoming Trump administration, you're not going to believe this. This has been reported. I've heard this myself. You know, the only hang up about Trump's maneuvering is they actually expected it could take several days to know the results. They really weren't sure right before the election that they were going to find out immediately. And now they've got several more days to move quicker to put stuff in place. That's the only thing, is that they were ready to move fast. They just weren't ready to move as fast as they can actually be able to move, knowing the results as clearly as it was. Donald Trump got a mandate. And instead of you Democrats hating Americans for voting for him, maybe you should understand why they wanted to go with the guy you think is a threat to democracy than with you people, particularly when the exit polls show that a lot of Americans who thought democracy is threatened think you're the ones threatening it, not him. Why is that? Do you even want to know why? Or are you just going to fall back on racism and misogyny? Greetings, conversationalists. I am delighted to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Let me go to the phones. Susan, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being patient.
Thank you. Good to be with you. My question may not have an answer, but I was very surprised when I visited with like a friend of 20 years the day after the election and was jumped on quite royally because I voted for Trump. This person, of course, was on the left. I voted for Trump as more of a centrist. And my question for you, because as this person just launched into this idea of all these things I must believe because I voted for Trump, which I didn't believe most of them, I just got to wondering how many people are radicals on the right versus radicals. Well, let me phrase it this way. We have radicals on the right. We have radicals on the left who both sides are believing crazy things. Do you have any idea the percentage of the centric people, the people who are just saying, man, I'm having to think this through and this is hard?
Yeah, okay. So, yes, I actually do. The exit polling asks people where they are, but not only do exit polls ask people where they are, you can kind of gauge where they are, and a majority of Americans are actually in the middle. I would love to tell you that most Americans are conservatives and on my side. The reality is about 30% of Americans right now consider themselves ideologically conservative, and about 25% of Americans consider themselves progressive, and everybody else considers themselves centrist or moderate or independent, one of those things. Now, it's a little bit more nebulous than that because some independents are conservative, some are liberal. But, Donald Trump, one of the reasons he won, and the left will not accept this because the left views themselves as in the center because so many members of the media are where they are. But the reality is Donald Trump moved to the center and Kamala Harris could not alienate the left. And the left misunderstands that at their peril. Donald Trump moved to there will be no national laws on abortion. Donald Trump moved to we want legal immigration, we just want illegal immigration gone. Donald Trump moved to the center on a host of issues, including pro-unionization for the private sector, and Kamala Harris was just too locked in to the left. Now, I got to tell you about Eden and Eden Pure Thunderstorm. Y'all, they sent me a new one. It is compact and powerful. It is, so the old one was kind of like a brick. It was black, had a knob on the side. This one is a little smaller and gray. It has a plug that flips out, and it generates plasma to kill bacteria and viruses. It also wipes out odors just as well as the last one. It's great. You can get 3 of them and save $200 still at EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3. You go to EdenPureDeals.com. You'll see the discount code box. Put in ERICK, number 3, no space. Get 3 Eden Pure Thunderstorms. They get rid of dust. They get rid of pollen. They get rid of pet dander. They get rid of litter box odors, pet odors. They get rid of every bad odor you can think of. And now they get rid of bacteria and viruses as well. Highly effective. EdenPureDeals.com. The discount code is ERIC3, ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com. Y'all, I'm not making this up. This is actually kind of wild. So Norm Macdonald, remember Norm Macdonald? Norm Macdonald has passed away, the comedian. Back in December of 2016, Norm Macdonald tweeted this. What terrifies me is if ISIS were to detonate a nuclear device and kill 50 million Americans. Imagine the backlash against peaceful Muslims. He was ahead of his time. A man, Camille Tabet, who is a Palestinian activist, has tweeted essentially the Norm Macdonald joke, but he didn't mean it as a joke. Violent mobs of young Arab men hunting Israelis and Jews in the streets of a European capital is no excuse for Islamophobia. Because it's all about you. Oh, my goodness gracious. Holy cow. It's an Open Line Friday. I am your host, Eric Erickson, coast to coast live right now, 877-973-7425. We've had so much breaking news. I need to clarify one point. Listener Tammy sent me a note on Instagram. I do want to clarify this because she's like, wait a second, isn't this old news? Didn't we have a guy who was plotting with the Iranians to assassinate Donald Trump? Ha ha. Great question. I'd actually totally forgotten about that one at that moment. That guy, yes, she's absolutely right. There was a guy plotting to assassinate Donald Trump on behalf of the Iranians. This is not the same guy. That guy was trying to get help from ISIS or Iran and was doing it on Telegram channels that were being surveilled by the Department of Justice. He was not collaborating with Iran or ISIS. He was trying to get their help. So he's going to jail. This plot today is actually the Iranian government doing it. And so now we know why Iran was not willing to help that guy. They already had their guy, and their guy turned out to be a rat who outed them to the FBI, cut a deal to the FBI. So that you got to, yes. So this is, I guess, technically the fourth assassination attempt, not the third. Although that one wasn't really credible. This one actually is. So, all right, we got to move on, and people have been waiting for quite a while. I want to take Lee's phone call. He has been waiting, well, I mean, we've had so much breaking news. Lee has been on our phones for over an hour. Lee, I'm so sorry you've had to wait that long. Welcome.
Hey, Lee, it's Lee, Leigh. I'm a girl.
Well, yeah, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for taking my call. Continue.
You're welcome. That's my sexist call screener, by the way. I just want you to know that.
Oh, God. Love your show. It's fantastic. Maybe that'll help that contention out with him. Real quick, I have a quick question. What are your thoughts, especially given what's going on with the crazy women on the left? What are your thoughts about a baby boom happening after this?
Okay. All right. So, so progressive female activists are trying to organize, they're literally calling it a sex boycott. Until their husbands agree to not vote Republican again. Now, here's the problem. I want to be delicate here, but how do I put this diplomatically? The women who are doing this are not exactly the women who most men want to produce children with. It's, I mean, y'all, Wegovy can be your friend is all I'm going to say. If you can get insurance to pay for it, some of y'all, wow. And the bald purple hair stuff, that's not attractive. So these are the women who are organizing a sex boycott. I think humanity already organized one against them. As for, though, if we have an economic explosion, the Fed cut interest rates yesterday. That's driving the stock market. It's going to help reinvigorate the economy. You've got Donald Trump's free trade policies coming in. You're going to have an extension of his tax cuts that could start making the economy feel good enough that a lot of people do feel like, you know what, I can start my family now. And that might actually be one of the things that happens, a net positive. Here's the problem. You bring this up, and I'm somewhat joking with it, but in all seriousness, there has never been a country that fell below the reproductive rate of 2.4% reproduction that ever recovered. So essentially, a society needs to produce 2.4 people for every living person to be a society that is growing because of the death rate. Any society that falls below 2.4 eventually disappears. Japan is having this happen right now. Japan has one of the lowest birth rates in the world. Children are revered in Japan at this point because nobody's having them. A lot of European countries, there are parts of Germany where, I'm not kidding, wolves have returned. Some of these areas of Germany were crowded and industrial, and a wildlife left. And they've become shrunken and small, and people are seeing wolves return from the mountain forests into neighborhoods in Germany that they hadn't seen in decades because population is in decline. And we are just now slipping below that. In fact, our nation, to continue to grow, needs to have an influx of immigrants who are willing to have kids. And frankly, all you Christians out there need to be fruitful and multiply. Stop worrying about tomorrow. Today, it'll take care of itself. Worry about today, and today, get it on and have babies. Everybody needs to have kids to keep this country going. It's just a reality. But honestly, these progressive women who are doing this, nobody wanted to have kids with them in the first place. They're going to be childless. And that's one of their problems. All right, back to the phones. Tracy, welcome. Thank you for being patient.
Hey, there's a chart of the United States broken down by county with voting results showing red and blue areas. Why are urban areas typically voting for Democrats, and why are rural areas typically voting for Republicans?
That is a great question. Here's why. Urban areas tend to be less white and rural areas tend to be more white. And even though we're talking about the major shift in black voters to the Republicans, a majority of black voters still voted Democrat. So you have white progressives tend to live in urban corridors. White progressives don't like to live out of the country. They want the city life, and they live there along with non-white voters, particularly black voters. Rural voters tend to be overwhelmingly white or Hispanic. And white and Hispanic voters increasingly are voting as a conservative bloc and a Republican. And so you do have that dichotomy. And one of the things that happened here in my state, in Georgia, the rural voters turned out at such a high rate that it neutralized the rate of the blue vote. Greg Bluestein in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has a big story today about the Democratic Party of Georgia and its complete collapse. The Democrats in Georgia, y'all, collapsed. Stacey Abrams left. There's a power vacuum. Nikema Williams, who is a Democratic member of Congress, became the chairwoman of the Georgia Democratic Party. There's a problem with that. Every one of you, I realize this is Georgia, but it doesn't matter. Those of you in Connecticut, those of you in California, those of you in Oregon, you're all going to get a laugh at this punchline. A member of Congress cannot raise money outside compliance with federal law. Now, what does this mean? Why do I say it this way? Because in Georgia, you can raise money if you're running for a state race. In Georgia, you can raise money from an LLC or from a corporation. You can raise money from a partnership. You can raise money from individuals. A member of Congress can't do that because corporations and LLCs and partnerships can't contribute to federal candidates. So the Democrats in Georgia picked as a chairwoman of their party to be progressive. They wanted a black woman to replace a white man from middle Georgia. So they pick a progressive female Democratic member of Congress, and she's immediately precluded from raising money from the groups that write the biggest checks in the state of Georgia. Bunch of idiots. Not only that, there's this quote in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that the chair, so one of the most pivotal areas of the state of Georgia for swing districts is Cobb County, Georgia. And one of the Cobb County is divided into districts, and one of the swingiest districts in that county, he says he doesn't even know the chairwoman of the Democratic Party in Georgia. What an absurd bit of malpractice on her part. She's a member of Congress. She can't raise money for the state level Democrats, and she doesn't even know her chairman in the state of Georgia. Absolutely absurd. They just blew it. And what happened is Brian Kemp has a massive permanent operation of the state of Georgia, and he mobilized every single voter everywhere he could possibly find. Donald Trump went from losing Georgia by 11,000 some odd votes to winning it by 120,000 votes. Absolute malpractice. Just absolutely wild to me that this happened in one of the swingiest swing states. And I honestly, I don't know that they're going to be able to recover. I just don't know that they're going to be able to recover in the midterms. Their saving grace right now, their theory is, Donald Trump will radicalize voters and they'll come back our way. I don't know that they will. Seriously, I don't know that they actually will. All right, back to the phones. George, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show.
How are you today, Eric?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm going to compliment you first for having wisdom for such a young individual. I'm in my 70s, and I'm just now gaining it. I'm looking at the immigration situation. Deporting 10 million illegal aliens could cost us easily $10 billion in proceeds. Could we turn that problem into lemonade instead of lemons? What would happen if we allowed people to go through the system and stay in the United States, but they would pay a fine or a penalty for entering illegally, and we would use those proceeds to apply to our national debt? If we charge 10 million illegal aliens $5,000 a piece, that's $50 billion that we could put back in our treasury. And those people that did not meet the criteria of becoming citizens of the United States because of criminal records and that, those are the ones we would deport. The others we could slowly integrate into our society with the tax.
You know, listen, I think this is an opportunity for Republicans to have a real discussion about this, because here is part of the reality. I was talking about this yesterday when I was in Tulsa. Someone asked this question. She said she grew up in California back in the 1960s, and they always had migrants come in and picking crops and the like. I was like, until 1968, when Lyndon Johnson needed to secure union support before he bailed on the presidency, there was a program in this country where migrants could come from south of the border very easily into this country. They didn't even have to pay income tax. They were just documented. They were allowed in the country for 6 months. They could be here for 6 months and leave for 6 months, and they could do it every year. And they could work in the fields and wherever you needed them, and everybody was happy, and the system worked, and we weren't overflowed with illegal aliens. And then Lyndon Johnson killed the program because unions decided that if we had Americans doing these jobs, they could be unionized in the fields, and it never worked out. We could do something like that. And look, the reality is some of these people we probably do want here, but a lot of them we don't. So send home the ones. I will tell you a cheap way, George. I've got this idea. You know the debt clock that shows the run-up of the national debt? I think we should put billboards everywhere in this country with a run-up to the day mass deportation begins, saying, you got time, get out now or we're coming for you, and incentivize these people to go on and leave without us having to spend money to get them out of here. Encourage all the illegal aliens to get out now. That would be my preference, is go on and make sure they know Donald Trump is coming, and with him will be deportation, so probably time for you to get out of the way. Now, I got to move on to Old Glory Bank. I need to tell you about my bank. Full disclosure, I have become an investor in Old Glory Bank, and here's why. Y'all, I love this bank. I am a business owner. I'm probably going to consider moving. I've got a personal account with them. I probably need to move my business account with them. Here's why. You can do mortgages, you can do loans, you can do business loans, you can do business checking and savings. I've got a no-fee checking and savings account, and they're just good people. They are conservatives. Larry Elder, John Rich, Ben Carson, and conservative bank advisors who started this company, they were concerned about the debanking trends for individuals and businesses. If you're a business, if you're a conservative business, and you're worried about getting debanked because of your conservative business, your gun store or something, you should use Old Glory Bank. They're a real bank out of Oklahoma. They have made themselves now available for nationwide access, not just regional access. I have a no-fee checking and a no-fee savings account with them. They've got a great debit card program. They've got a brilliant app you can use for budgeting and even depositing cash. It's oldglorybank.com, oldglorybank.com. They're member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. They really are my bank, oldglorybank.com. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, I'm very happy to have you. Keep in mind, we got a lot of moving parts today. There's been a lot of breaking news. People have sat on hold for a very long time. I want to see if I can get to Michael's phone call here. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you doing?
Great.
I was wondering if you could tell me when we can get back to an oil-based economy, because Biden did that on his first day. And my actual question, I was asking the call screener, what percentage of what Trump has promised or what he can do through executive action and which through the Congress and Senate, which is going to be friendly to him but will take longer? And I'll wait for your answer. Enjoy the show and learn a lot. Listen to you. Thank
Michael, thanks so much. So, okay, there are two classes of things that have to happen. One is executive order, the other being legislative policy. And Donald Trump can do executive orders very quickly. And what can he do by executive order? He can pause regulations. In some cases, he can waive rules or even provisions of law. And he's got to do it through a process. This is one of the things he lost twice in the Supreme Court, with the Supreme Court arguing that you have the power to do what you want to do, but you have a process you have to follow. You can't short-circuit the process. And he got a little impatient the first time. But he can do those things. But then there is reconciliation. Reconciliation is, that the U.S. Senate has a filibuster. It takes 60 votes in the Senate to close debate. And unless you get 60 votes, you can't get legislation to be voted on in the Senate, except for reconciliation. Here's what reconciliation is. Reconciliation is you take the current budget and you make tweaks to the spending. You wind down certain policies and you spin up certain policies. You make cuts one place, like, for example, the tax cut policies. The way the Republicans were able to make tax cuts work is they cut other portions of government to save money for the tax cuts. Because under the rules of reconciliation, what your spending does cannot negatively impact the debt. It has to actually positively impact the debt. That is, it has to draw down the national debt. So that's what Republicans did with they cut spending enough to be able to cut taxes. But they could only do it through 2025, the way the budget mechanisms work. And the Democrats, by the way, they couldn't stop it. Now, the Democrats did the same thing with the Inflation Reduction Act, which was actually the Green New Deal. They put in economic incentives and things like that they said would spur the economy. They got the Congressional Budget Office to score it positively. The Republicans are going to have to fight on that front with the CBO. But you can't get it's not filibusterable. So you can do 2 reconciliation packages. Chuck Schumer, the Democrats, proved that. Set that precedent, and you could do a lot through reconciliation. And they have one this coming year, and they'll have one in 2026 to be able to reconcile the budget and put their policies in place without a filibuster blocking them.